Okay, so today we were diving into a story that's been all over the news lately. Sri Lanka's got a new president.
Right? A real shakeup.
And I know you're all about global current events, so this is right up your alley.
Definitely.
So we're taking a deep dive into Anura Kumara Disanayake's election victory. We'll be pulling from a Trendline episode that had a really insightful take on this whole thing.
It's interesting because Dissanayake isn't your typical politician.
Not at all.
He comes from the JVP, the Janata Vimukthi Peramuna, a party with a history of, well, shaking things up.
Yeah, they haven't been afraid to call out the establishment, so for him to win, it's like, did Sri Lanka just drain the swamp for real?
It wasn't just talk this time. And Trendline really captured how people are reacting. It's a mix of, is this really happening, and what's next?
A total mix of excitement and nervousness.
Definitely. People are hopeful, especially those who felt let down by how the last government handled the economic crisis. But there's also skepticism, like, can he really turn things around?
Especially since he's spent his career criticizing the very system he's now leading. That's got to be tricky.
Absolutely. It's a double-edged sword. He knows the system's flaws, but can he work within it to make those changes? Trendline pointed out that some people aren't so sure.
It's like, imagine being the IT guy who always complains about the company's outdated tech, and suddenly you're the CEO.
Exactly. You know what needs fixing, but now you're responsible for actually fixing it. And Sri Lanka is still reeling from that economic crisis, so the pressure is on. Trendline talked about how people are anxious, worried about the cost of living. They want to see action.
And Dissanayake made some pretty big promises.
That he has.
Tackling corruption, fixing the economy, making farming profitable again.
And don't forget, lowering the cost of living, restructuring their debt, basically hitting the reset button on the whole economy.
Yeah, ambitious might be an understatement. And Trendline pointed out that while some experts are cautiously optimistic, others are like, hold on, these are huge issues.
Right, like with the debt restructuring, what does that even look like? Will he try to get some of it forgiven, renegotiate, find new lenders? These decisions have huge consequences.
And it's all connected to his foreign policy too, right? He wants to be more balanced, which has everyone watching.
Absolutely. China's a major lender to Sri Lanka, so how Dissanayake handles that relationship is a big deal. But it's not just China. India and the West are paying attention too. Everyone wants to know how this will reshape things.
It's like this new president, tons of challenges, and the whole world's watching to see what he does next.
And we can't forget about the internal politics here. Trendline made a good point about this too. Dissanayake might be in charge now, but the system he's inherited, it's been resistant to change for, well, a long time.
Yeah, it's not like those old political networks just disappear overnight. He's really got to prove he can actually get stuff done.
Exactly. It's a tightrope walk. Show the people who voted for him that change is happening, but also figure out how to work within the system, find common ground, not get stuck in dead ends.
It's a bit of a head-scratcher. How do you go from being the guy who criticizes everything to the guy who has to make everything work?
And that's where his outsider status might actually help him. He doesn't owe any favors to the same people as the old guard. That's something Trendline pointed out as a potential advantage.
Makes sense.
He understands how the system is broken, so maybe he can actually fix it in a way that someone from the inside couldn't.
But not having those relationships could also make it harder. It's a tough spot to be in.
And time is definitely a factor. Trendline really stressed that. People are hurting, they need to see results, and they need to see them fast. He has to deliver on those promises, and quickly.
It reminds me of this saying, you campaign with big speeches, but you govern with everyday decisions. It's one thing to talk about change, another to actually make it happen.
Right. And that usually means tough choices, figuring out what to prioritize. Will he go for those quick wins to get people on his side? Or will he play the long game, even if it takes longer to see the payoff?
And we can't forget about the opposition. They're going to be all over him, waiting for him to slip up. How do you handle that while trying to do something this big?
It's a juggling act, that's for sure. Keep the people happy, navigate the political maze, manage what everyone around the world is saying and expecting.
So the big question is, can Dissanayake really pull this off? Will Sri Lanka be different this time? Or will it be the same old story all over again? That really is the million-dollar question, and it's something Trendline really grappled with too.
Yeah, they weren't afraid to say like, hey, we don't have all the answers.
Right.
But it got me thinking, this isn't just about Sri Lanka, is it?
Definitely not.
It's bigger than that. I mean, what happens there? If Dissanayake succeeds or fails, it's a signal to other countries dealing with the same kinds of problems.
Exactly. It's like, can anyone who ran on shaking things up actually change how the game is played once they're in charge.
Right. And just imagine if he somehow threads the needle, you know?
Yeah.
The economy stabilizes, he handles those political landmines, keeps everyone internationally happy.
That's a tall order.
It is. But if he actually does it, it could be huge. People might start to believe real change is possible again.
It's a lot to process, and honestly, it's going to be fascinating to watch how it all plays out. We've just scratched the surface here, but hopefully this deep dive has given you some food for thought. What do we always say?
Stay curious.
That's right. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and, form your own opinions as this whole thing unfolds.
And we'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's got everyone talking. Until then, thanks for listening.